I brought down $1 billion company because they destroyed my family. 5 years ago, Titan Industries was worth $2.3 billion. Today, they're filing for bankruptcy. Their CEO is in federal prison, and their entire executive team has been destroyed. And it all started because they thought my family was too small to fight back. My name is David Chen, and this is how I single-handedly brought down one of the most powerful corporations in America. To understand this story, you need to understand my father. Michael Chen immigrated from Taiwan in 1985 with nothing but a dream and $500 in his pocket. For 30 years, he built Chen Electronics from a one-man repair shop into a thriving small business. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Dad employed 12 people, all immigrants like him who needed a chance. He treated them like family, paid fair wages, and built something he was proud of. I grew up in that shop, learning about circuits and business and the value of hard work. After college, I joined the family business as Dad's partner, planning to eventually take over when he retired. That was the plan anyway. Until Titan Industries decided our little corner of the market looked profitable. Titan was a massive conglomerate that acquired small tech companies and either absorbed them or destroyed them. When they entered our market segment, we knew there would be competition, but Dad wasn't worried. "We provide better service," he said. "Our customers are loyal. We'll be fine." He was wrong. Titan didn't just compete. They declared war. They opened a facility 2 blocks from our shop, hired away 3 of our best employees with double salaries, and began undercutting our prices by 40%. But that was just the beginning. They started filing frivolous lawsuits against us. Patent infringement, trademark violations, business practice complaints, all baseless. But each one cost us thousands in legal fees to fight. When that didn't work fast enough, they got personal. Titan's lawyers discovered Dad had made a small accounting error on his taxes 3 years earlier. Nothing criminal, just a mistake that resulted in about $800 in underpaid taxes. They reported it to the IRS as suspected fraud. The audit was devastating. Not because we'd done anything wrong, but because it froze our assets for 6 months while they investigated. We couldn't pay suppliers, couldn't make payroll, couldn't operate. Dad had to lay off 8 employees, people who'd worked for him for decades, whose families depended on those jobs. I watched this proud man cry as he handed out termination letters to people he considered his children. The IRS eventually cleared us completely, but the damage was done. Most of our customers had moved to Titan during the investigation. Our reputation was destroyed by rumors Titan had spread about our tax problems. Within 18 months, Chen Electronics was bankrupt. Dad lost everything: the business, our family home, his life savings. The stress gave him a heart attack at 58. As I sat in that hospital room, watching my father hooked up to machines fighting for his life because a billion-dollar corporation wanted to eliminate a small competitor, I made a decision that would define the next 5 years of my life. Titan Industries thought they were too big to face consequences for destroying small businesses. I was about to prove them very, very wrong. Here's what Titan's executives didn't know about me. I had a degree in computer science and an MBA in business strategy. I'd spent 5 years learning every aspect of running a business for my father, and I understood how corporations really worked. More importantly, I now had something every dangerous enemy has: absolutely nothing left to lose. While Dad recovered from his heart attack, I started planning the systematic destruction of Titan Industries. My first step was getting inside the enemy. I applied for a job at Titan under a slightly modified name, David C. Chen instead of David Chen. Since they dealt with my father, not me directly, and since there are thousands of Chens in the database, I slipped through their background check. I started as a low-level analyst in their acquisitions department, the same department that had orchestrated our destruction. My job was researching small companies for potential takeover or elimination. For 6 months, I was the perfect employee: competent, reliable, invisible. I learned their systems, their processes, their corporate culture. Most importantly, I learned their secrets. Titan wasn't just aggressive, they were criminal. I discovered a pattern of illegal business practices going back years: price fixing, bribery of local officials, industrial espionage, tax evasion schemes that made Dad's tiny accounting error look like a rounding error. But I needed more than knowledge. I needed allies, evidence, and a plan that would destroy them completely. I wasn't the first person Titan had destroyed. Over the past decade, they'd eliminated dozens of small businesses using the same tactics they'd used on us: frivolous lawsuits, regulatory harassment, industrial sabotage, all perfectly legal on the surface, but coordinated campaigns designed to destroy competition. I started tracking down other victims: business owners who'd lost everything, employees who'd been fired for refusing to participate in illegal activities, former Titan executives who'd quit in disgust. There was Margaret Rodriguez, whose family restaurant chain had been bankrupted by Titan's food service division through fake health department complaints and supplier intimidation. There was James Park, whose tech startup had been destroyed when Titan stole his patents through a shell company, then sued him for patent infringement using his own innovations. There was Sarah Williams, a former Titan VP who'd been fired and blacklisted after refusing to participate in a bribery scheme involving city contracts. One by one, I found them all, and one by one, I convinced them to join my war against Titan Industries. Working inside Titan while building my network of allies, I began systematically documenting their crimes. Every illegal practice, every cover-up, every executive who knew what was happening and stayed silent. The beauty of being inside their system was access. I copied financial records, showing the shell companies used for money laundering. I recorded meetings where executives discussed bribing officials. I gathered evidence of the industrial espionage operations they ran against competitors. But the smoking gun was their competition elimination protocol. an actual written strategy document outlining how to systematically destroy small competitors through legal harassment and regulatory manipulation. The document was created by Titan's CEO, Richard Blackstone, and it detailed exactly what they'd done to my father and dozens of other small business owners. It was a playbook for corporate terrorism, and I had a copy. As I gathered evidence, I also recruited allies within Titan itself. You'd be amazed how many employees of corrupt companies are disgusted by their employers, but too afraid to speak out. There was Jennifer Walsh, an accountant who'd been forced to help hide illegal payments. She'd kept copies of everything, waiting for someone brave enough to use them. There was Marcus Thompson, a sales director who'd witnessed years of price-fixing meetings and recorded several on his phone as insurance against being scapegoated. There was Dr. Lisa Chen, no relation, a research director who discovered Titan was selling products they knew were defective, putting customers at risk. These weren't criminals. They were decent people trapped in a corrupt system, waiting for someone to give them a way out. I became their exit strategy. After 3 years of preparation, I had everything I needed: comprehensive evidence of crimes spanning a decade, a network of witnesses ready to testify, and allies inside the company feeding me real-time information. But taking down a billion-dollar corporation required more than evidence. It required perfect timing and multiple simultaneous attacks from different angles. I coordinated with investigative journalists at 3 major newspapers, prepared comprehensive packages for federal prosecutors, organized the evidence for regulatory agencies, and set up a legal strategy with attorneys representing all of Titan's victims. The plan was elegant in its simplicity: hit them simultaneously from every direction with overwhelming evidence, making it impossible for them to cover up, deny, or deflect. But first, I had to make it personal. Before launching the public war against Titan, I wanted Richard Blackstone to know exactly who was destroying his empire and why. I scheduled a meeting with him under the pretense of presenting a new acquisition target. When I walked into his corner office, the same office where the decision had been made to destroy my family, he didn't recognize me at first. "Mr. Blackstone," I said, placing a folder on his desk, "I'd like to discuss Chen Electronics." The confusion on his face was priceless. Chen Electronics? That little repair shop we dealt with a few years ago? Why would we... Then he saw my name on the folder. David Chen. The realization hit him like a physical blow. "You're Michael Chen's son," I finished. "The man whose business you destroyed, whose family you bankrupted, who had a heart attack because of the stress you caused him." Blackstone's face went pale. "That was just business. Nothing personal." I smiled and opened the folder. Inside were copies of every piece of evidence I'd gathered against Titan over 3 years. Financial records, recorded conversations, the competition elimination protocol document with his signature on it. "You're right," I said. "It was just business, and this is just business too." The assault begins, 24 to 26 minutes. I walked out of Blackstone's office and made 4 phone calls. The first was to the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. The second was to the SEC. The third was to the IRS. The fourth was to the Washington Post. Within 6 hours, federal agents were raiding Titan's offices, while the first news stories broke online. Titan Industries, a pattern of illegal business practices, was trending on social media before Blackstone even made it home from work. But that was just the opening move. Over the next week, the evidence I'd gathered triggered investigations by 12 different federal and state agencies. The Justice Department opened a criminal investigation into racketeering charges. The SEC launched an inquiry into securities fraud. The IRS began auditing their tax practices going back 10 years. Meanwhile, class action lawsuits were filed on behalf of all the small businesses Titan had illegally destroyed. Patent lawsuits were filed for the intellectual property they'd stolen. Employment lawsuits were filed by the employees they'd illegally fired. Titan Industries went from being a predator to being surrounded by prey that had learned to fight back. The dominoes fall, 26 meters to 28 meters. The investigations revealed crimes far worse than even I had discovered. Titan had been operating as a criminal enterprise for over a decade, using their legitimate business as cover for industrial espionage, bribery, fraud, and racketeering. Blackstone was arrested on 18 federal charges. The CFO was indicted for money laundering. The head of acquisitions, my former boss, was charged with conspiracy and fraud. But the real beauty was watching the company collapse from within. As investigations intensified, executives began turning on each other, desperately trying to make deals with prosecutors. The stock price collapsed. Major clients canceled contracts. Banks called in loans. Within 6 months, Titan Industries, once worth $2.3 billion, was bleeding money and facing bankruptcy. The personal victories, 28 meters to 29 meters. The legal settlements were staggering. The class action lawsuit resulted in a $400 million judgment against Titan, with my father receiving the largest individual settlement, $12 million for the destruction of his business and the health problems it caused. But money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was seeing justice served to the people who'd thought they were too powerful to face consequences. Margaret Rodriguez got her restaurants back and opened 5 new locations with her settlement money. James Park's patents were returned to him, and he relaunched his company with Titan's former clients. Sarah Williams was hired as CEO of the company that bought Titan's assets, with a mandate to run it ethically. The final justice, 29 to 30 minutes. Richard Blackstone was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. In his final statement before sentencing, he looked directly at me in the courtroom gallery. All this because of one little repair shop, he said bitterly. The judge's response was perfect. Mr. Blackstone, you seem to have missed the point entirely. This isn't about one repair shop. This is about the dozens of families you destroyed, the laws you broke, and the arrogance that made you think you could get away with it forever. As they led Blackstone away in handcuffs, I thought about my father, who was sitting next to me in the courtroom, healthy and proud and vindicated. Titan Industries officially ceased operations last month. Their headquarters building now houses a small business incubator funded by the class action settlement, helping entrepreneurs who've been targeted by larger companies. Sometimes the little guy wins. Sometimes David really does beat Goliath. But it takes patience, strategy, and the absolute refusal to let injustice go unanswered. My name is David Chen, and this is how I learned that no corporation is too big to fall when they've made the wrong enemy.